All right, let's just dive right into this explainer. Life is inherently supposed to be joyful, free, and frankly, deeply fulfilling. But let's be real, so often it's just filled with anxiety and endless misery. Today, we're unpacking a fascinating piece of source material that deeply analyzes the philosophical logic behind human suffering, and it actually breaks it down into 18 distinct sources.
So it forces us to ask this foundational question: what in hell actually causes the pain in life? It's validating, right? Because we all feel that frustration at some point. Why do we feel so much pain when we're supposedly doing everything right according to society? To uncover our psychological roadblocks, we've got to strip away our assumptions and look at the actual root causes of our daily miseries.
Instead of just reading a tedious list of all 18, we've organized them into 5 core themes for this explainer. We'll look at the faulty life GPS, the trap of the ego, interpersonal mental friction, the chains of attachment, and finally, breaking free.
Kicking things off with Theme 1, the faulty life GPS.
Think about it. Our worldview and our core values basically act as our internal navigation system. If you plug in the wrong destination, say operating on the faulty logic of that old saying, people die for money and birds die for food, well, your life's GPS is fundamentally broken. You are literally routing yourself directly into anxiety and fear simply because you're chasing the wrong destination. It's wild when you think about it that way.
And we actively drive off the correct path when we narrow our perspective strictly to our current physical space, completely ignoring broader universal laws like cause and effect. Suppressing your inherent nature or intentionally violating established societal laws is described in the text as hurling eggs against stones. It's a futile rebellion that guarantees a messy, painful outcome. You're fundamentally fighting against the current of nature, and nature always wins.
Moving right along to Theme 2, the trap of the ego. This trap is exactly where our selfish desires, our sheer greed, and honestly even our laziness actively trap us in a cycle of exhaustion. The text brilliantly illustrates the total futility of this with a great quote. Only take 1 cup of water among thousands of rivers and lakes. There are thousands of rivers out there, but realistically, you only need 1 cup to quench your thirst. If you want to possess all the rivers without any restraint, every dollar, every promotion, every ounce of prestige, you are actively choosing a life of suffering. The philosophical logic is simple. Boundless desire mathematically cannot be fulfilled by a finite physical existence.
Because the ego runs on this really grueling life cycle. Step 1 is possession. You get the thing. But it never ends there. Step 2 is maintenance. Every single new thing you own requires exhausting, brain-racking mental energy to maintain. And finally, Step 3, occupation. To keep what you have, you're forced into these life-and-death struggles, fighting to protect it. Take a specific case, like buying a massive, expensive house way beyond your means. Sure, you possess it, but now you have to exhaust yourself to pay for its upkeep, and fight relentlessly in the corporate rat race just to avoid losing it. You haven't bought a home, you've bought a full-time job of suffering.
Now let's look at Theme 3, interpersonal mental friction.
This friction happens when our internal desires inevitably clash with other people. The very second you start comparing yourself to others, or the moment you adopt an arrogant, superior tone with your peers, you instantly destroy your own peace. And the painful result is immediate. We're talking restlessness, hatred, and a total blindness to your own flaws. We all know comparison is the thief of joy, and the source material really hits the nail on the head here. Adopting a mindset of constant complaining or superiority actively invites limitless misery into your daily interactions.
And here is a massive psychological roadblock for so many of us. Trying to change or control others is a completely futile effort. The text states a profound truth. Every entity has its own inherent nature. Trying to force someone else to live according to your personal will, whether that's a partner, a child, or a coworker, is an entirely thankless and painful endeavor. Think about a specific instance where you tried to fundamentally change a partner's personality. It doesn't work, right? It only creates resentment and profound suffering for both of you because you're fighting against their natural essence.
This brings us to Theme 4, the chains of attachment.
Relying entirely on external sources, whether it's people, money, or societal structures, creates fatal dependencies. It completely strips away our independent consciousness. The moment you place your survival, your shelter, or your spiritual happiness entirely in the hands of someone else, you lose your agency. You basically become a puppet, a slave to their opinions and moods. If your emotional stability depends 100% on a partner's validation, or your self-worth is entirely attached to a job title, any shift in those external factors is going to utterly destroy you.
Now, the author presents a really fascinating, unconventional framework here. They argue, quite neutrally, that what society often champions, pledging eternal love, demanding absolute exclusivity, or this idea of voluntarily suffering for romance, is actually toxic to your well-being. They label it poisonous love. The argument is that it creates these incredibly rigid expectations, so when reality inevitably shifts, it results in deep, infatuated suffering rather than natural, flowing joy.
Expanding on that unconventional logic, the text goes even further, categorizing broad societal constructs like marriage, family structures, nations, political parties, and religions as literal programs of suffering. The idea here is that once you enter into the rigid operating systems of these organizations, you're adopting all their built-in conflicts and strict rules. You essentially trade your natural individual freedom for a pre-packaged life path. And the text argues this guarantees structured suffering simply because you're no longer flowing independently.
So how do we get out of this? Let's look at Theme 5, Breaking Free to Freedom.
To finally break free, we have to transition from a shackled mind to a free mind. Let's look at a practical example. Instead of letting your self-worth be dictated by a job promotion, which is a classic fatal dependency, an independent consciousness finds validation internally, completely regardless of corporate outcomes. It means dropping that exhausting need to control everything around you, letting go of those heavy societal labels, and just simply flowing with nature's way. When you stop hurling eggs against stones, your life's GPS naturally restores itself back to a joyful state.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this question to really think about. Which of these 18 programs are you currently running in your life? Take a moment to reflect on your own internal navigation system. Are you running the program of constant comparison, trapped in that cycle of endless possession and maintenance? Or maybe bound by fatal dependencies on others? Ask yourself right now, what specific attachments do you need to drop today to finally escape the cycle of pain and step into the joyful, free life you were actually meant to live?